We are live. Welcome to Inside Movies Galore. My name is David Streggy. I'm your host for the evening. With us today, we have director Dakota Bailey with us. And we will get to his films in a moment. But before we discuss his films with him, I wanted to introduce him to a few people of mine. Go ahead, Dane. Tell him a little bit about yourself, what you do, and go ahead.
Hello, listeners. This is Dane Kyle, writer, director, and now podcaster. And so I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and for now. And I just made some short films lately. Got another one coming out, and going to be transitioning into features soon.
Okay, Celeste, why don't you tell Dakota a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Celeste. I'm a horror hostess on the horror host show Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics that is on television and online. And I am also the host for a burlesque troupe out of Milwaukee called Glamour Junkies Neo Burlesque.
Okay. And although everybody kind of knows a little bit about myself, I'm David Streggy. I run Movies Galore Milwaukee, kind of a group and a review type website. But I've also become a producer of some sort over time. And I've asked Dakota to be on this show. Thank you for coming, Dakota. Why don't you tell... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on here.
Definitely. I'm glad to finally put a voice to that twisted mind of yours. So why don't we get started here? First, let's begin with who you are, where you're from, and what were your inspirations for becoming a director of such independent films that you have created, sir.
Yeah, my name is Dakota, and I come from Denver, Colorado. Well, I still live here, actually. Yeah, we shoot all the movies here, and I wanted to make movies when I was a kid, and then kind of stopped when I was a teenager. But then once I was in my late teens, I did a few short films, and then now we've done 3 full-length features so far.
Okay. Well, to get started, so your first feature was actually My Master Satan. What were your ideas behind that film?
That film started out as a short film, actually, the Satan's Coming for You. We decided to make 2 more short films and like combine them all so that it was basically like a interconnected anthology film with the same characters, but it was kind of an anti-film at the same time on VHS and purposefully degraded the footage.
Okay. And did you have any challenges creating the film at the time?
The issue was just the shooting on the VHS.
Okay. And did I watch the film?
No, I'm saying if you watch the film, you'll see like how degraded that it really is, the footage. So it was kind of just hard to make a movie out of that.
Very, very true. Why did you choose the horror genre? I figure since we're talking about horror films tonight, why did you choose?
I'm not sure you can necessarily label the films as horror. I would say like maybe like real life horror. But the reason why, I've just always been fascinated by dark subject matter.
Gotcha. And as dark subject matter is, sometimes it can be quite the Rorschach test, or you can interpret film whichever way you want it to. So that's why I kind of wanted to get you on the show so that we could discuss a few more aspects of the film itself. And at the time of any makeup artists that you worked with at the time?
Collaborators. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like someone who did your makeup, or
we've actually never had a makeup artist or anything.
Okay, so
we use just like a very stripped down approach. And it's pretty much, we do everything ourselves.
Awesome. So, also, after the film came out, did the public have?
Yeah, with My Master Satan. It was kind of a mix. It had the issues because it has the VHS quality, and then some parts of the film are hard to hear, and we knew it would be people would get it.
So but moving on to America.
So I would say that it was kind of like half and half. Like a lot of people like really hated it, but then the people that like the VHS quality of it really liked it.
Okay. And as some people are into the VHS quality, the SOV per se, there are definitely some fans of that quality of film. So moving on to American Scumbags, what was your idea of American Scumbags?
Yeah, the idea was to just make kind of like a 70s style crime or exploitation film with better equipment than we had on My Master Satan. And it's kind of a dark humor film at the same time.
Okay. And did you have any kind of a famous or favorite scene in My Master Satan or American Scumbags?
Yes. In My Master Satan, there's the scene where my character, Alistair, and then his friend, Charlie, go to a drug dealer's home to collect some debt. And then they busted on the drug dealer, and he has the drug dealer that they're there to assassinate is having sex with a sex doll. And then they proceed to murder him. Yeah, and then the Charlie steals the doll. And then for American Scumbags, I would say that my favorite part was where one of the main characters in the film named Billy, where he is with the prostitute and they have sex underneath the bridge, and then he and doesn't pay. But then I also like the part where he goes and confronts his ex-girlfriend and her boyfriend and shoots the boyfriend and then throws a battery acid on her face.
So let's see. Original interview with you, you said that American Scumbags was relatively easy to make. And as you just said, that you shot the film with better equipment. Something earlier to me about your neighbor, Darian Fox.
Yeah, he plays, Danny. I mean, yeah, he plays Billy in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, he's actually kind of my main collaborator right now, because in our new film, The Acid Sorcerer, he became interested in the technical aspects of filming as opposed to just being an actor. And he ended up being the second unit director on our new film.
And now that you've just mentioned your newest film, why don't you tell a little bit about your newest film and what you think that you've created with your now on Indiegogo still, right?
Yeah, it's still on there. It's just the film is already finished. We're just allowing, it's a pre-sale campaign so that the people can get first edition signed DVDs or a signed poster from the film. So
okay.
It's about our new film, The Acid Sorcerer. It's about a film broken down into 5 segments, but it's about a serial killer, a drug addicted couple, a drug dealer that has HIV, and Nikki, a cross-dressing snuff filmmaker.
Okay, so how do you feel about the ending quality of the film? Do you think that that you had the same feel as you did some of your previous films, or do you think that you've learned since then?
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot since then, and then but I'm really happy with The Acid Sorcerer because when I conceived the idea for the film itself, I just envisioned like a really dark and hateful film, and I think that we accomplished that pretty well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give this moment here to allow you to state where you can find your films, where what your studio is, and forward to in the future with you.
Okay. Yeah, my films can be bought on Amazon.com. And The Acid Sorcerer, if you just Google it, the link for the Indiegogo campaign is one of the very first things that pops up. And the name of our studio is called RA Productions. And you can find us our Facebook page at Dakota Bailey-RA Productions.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to leave this section up to questions and answers that maybe my fellow listeners, or either Shanta, do you have any questions for our featured director of the night?
Well, I haven't seen his movies, so I would love to, and then I'm sure I will.
Yeah, actually, if you just Google American Scumbags or My Master Satan, 3 Tales of Drug-Fueled Violence, they come up online already for free because we have an agreement with Kings of Horror, the YouTube streaming site, and they're streaming those 2 films online for free.
Oh, wonderful. I'll definitely watch them.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And Dane, do you have any questions for our featured director of the night?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Celeste. I'm going to need to see the work before I can give appropriate comments, feedback, or questions, but obviously great to hear from a fellow indie director trying to make it in the movie biz, as we all are trying to, aren't we?
Yeah, thank you.
And plus he's agreed to join in our discussion here tonight, so I think that's awesome.
Oh, great.
Round of applause to Dakota for doing that with us, as we are just beginning ourselves as a show. So I thank you for coming on. So
yeah, thank you for having me.
Any case, now that we got that out of the way, not that it was a trying situation, especially to get on. But we are definitely here to talk about Salo and the 120 Days of Sodom, which was directed by none other than Pierre Paola Pasolini. Released in 1975, and it was based on some of the writings of the Marquis de Sade while writing them in the Bastille. So, Dane, why don't you let me know what you thought of this film?
The film being Barney's Great Adventure. Is that what you're talking about?
No, Dane. Take
Oh,
that.
oh no, I watched the wrong movie. I'm sorry. Oh dear, what am I gonna do? No, I'm kidding. Okay, so me and Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, have a very interesting history because it is one of the most controversial films ever made, obviously, and has not ceased to be controversial despite all the films that have been made since then. I saw it in college because I was obviously curious, and I felt, need to see it for my film, added to my film repertoire. And I'll never forget watching it on my laptop, rented it from the Media Resource Center, and I was in a library at the time. Not a great movie to be watching in a library. And it was easily, I've seen a lot of hard to watch movies in my time. Salo was easily the hardest to watch out of any movie I've ever seen. And so then to rewatch it, and I got it on from the Criterion Collection, got it for pretty cheap, surprisingly, not too long ago, and then rewatched it just the other day for this particular broadcast, and arguably it was possibly even harder to sit through the second time, even though I knew what all was going to come. I think it was mostly the dread of just being in that place again, because it's not really about any specific act that is shocking or disturbing, even though there's plenty of them. It's mostly the atmosphere that the film creates. It is an atmosphere completely and 100% devoid of hope. There throughout the entire 2-hour running time, there is no shred of hope of any kind, and it's the only film I've seen that can effectively do that. Um, Dreading going back into that place again, but I did notice things that I didn't quite notice before, and we'll dive into those as we go. But yeah, it's quite an interesting experience, especially after you started off watching Barney's Great Adventure, and then you realized, wait, I'm not in the mood for this. I need to wreck my life a little bit more. That's what I like to do on my Saturday nights.
Well, the film focuses on four wealthy, corrupt Italian libertines during the time of the fascist Republic of Salo, between the years of 1943 and 1945. So these four libertines end up kidnapping 18 teenagers and subjecting them to 4 months of extreme violence, sadism, and sexual torture. So I'm going to bring this over to Celeste over here because she's actually read the book. About the book and aspects of the film.
Well, I first, and I am a Marquis de Sade fanatic, so I've read like everything he's written. So after I had read the book, I was like, oh, there's a movie, I have to go watch it. So I watched it, but I watched it sort of with a critical eye of someone who loves a book. So it kind of got ruined for me a little bit because I kept comparing it to the book, obviously. But I still liked the movie a lot, and I thought they were able to translate it fairly well for a book that was unfinished.
Okay. From what I understand, the story is actually in 4 segments, inspired by Dante's Divine Comedy, and like the Anti-Inferno, the Circle of Menenius, the Circle of Shit, and the Circle of Blood. So it was definitely different, using some of the aspects of several different, genres of books. It's been speculated that discussions of Friedrich Nietzsche's on the genealogy of morality and Ezra Pound's The Cantos,
Well,
as well
I mean,
as Marcel's sequence In Search of Lost Time.
he really liked taking popular books at the time and making fun of them because, I mean, for good reason. Like, he wrote the book Justine to make fun of Pamela. And so I'd read Pamela, and it was like easily one of the worst things I've ever read, and I've never rolled my eyes so much. So then when I read Justine, it was actually very amusing to me to see him sort of poking fun at that very popular book of the time. So he takes everything and sort of twists it in a way that's humorous and dark at the same time.
Okay. Dakota, I sent you a copy of Salo. Now, have you actually seen the film before?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, back when I was 18, I saw it.
So what did you think of it then, and what did you think of it now?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it when I saw it back when I was 17, and yeah, I enjoyed it again when I rewatched it Sunday.
Okay. And what do you feel what kind of meaning did it bring to you?
It kind of brought like kind of a political meaning to me slightly.
Okay.
But it's kind of hard for me to articulate.
Well, why don't you go ahead and try? That's why.
Well,
I figured this was a great film to talk about.
Yeah, it's about, well, I guess about the rich and having power over the poor people.
Okay. What do you think, Dane? Do you think it has something to do with the power over the rich people or the poor people?
I didn't really detect a socioeconomic focus as much as it was about. Well, it's about the end of Mussolini's Italy. This is 1944 to 1945. So it's about the end of Mussolini's Italy. It's about the end of the Axis powers. So it's kind of like the last throes of fascism, really. So what's interesting about Pasolini's transposition of the story from the 1700s in France to World War II in Italy is that it's about, like I said, it's the last throes of a philosophy that is dying. You know, a political philosophy that is dying, and so you have these libertines who are locking themselves away to engage in every kind of aberrant behavior that is known to man, and then some. You know, in the wake of, and this is something I didn't detect the first time, was I noticed sounds that to me outside the palace, to me sounded like airplanes flying overhead, which kind of led me to believe, oh yeah, so the war really is coming to an end and their side is losing. So I thought that was sort of an interesting detail that I didn't notice before. But yeah, it's definitely has political overtones, but because it's based on a work that is not, you know, inherently Italian, it's not, you know, it's not even from that country, not from that time period. It's the themes are more universal, and but I think that Pasolini said it there just because that was in his home country, and it was in the recent history, the then recent history, such that people could relate to it, and that might help illuminate the themes better. Which, of course, one can argue if they did or if they didn't, you know, just given the shocking nature of the content. But for my own sake, I think that putting it there was a good way to help make it more immediately relevant for those living in the 20th century.
Do you think now? Do you think that there is something about freedom within the film, some kind of release of freedom with atrociousness?
Yes,
Dane?
yes and no, because yes, well, the whole philosophy of being a libertine or being a sadist, sadist being, I guess, not so much. I mean, cruelty is a part of it, but in the larger sense of sadism being someone who is 100% free from any kind of influence, whether that's governmental, religious, moral, any kind of influence, free to pursue one's own pleasure, especially at the expense of someone else's rights, dignity, to inflict pain on other people, that sort of thing. So our four libertines are sadists in the complete sense of the word. They are unrestrained. They are free in the utmost sense, and yet their freedom comes at the expense of their victims. And in fact, they kind of need their victims to be deprived of their rights in order to experience a fuller sense of freedom themselves. So it's an interesting comment on the fact that for those in power, symbiotic relationship between those in power who are set out to abuse those that are beneath them, and that they must be deprived of their rights and dignity in order for them to keep their position.
Okay. Celeste, what do you think about the power over the poor? Do you think that it has something to do with the political power that was in the Mussolini's Italy of the time?
I was always thinking of it more in terms of like, not even that, but sort of in a bigger sense, like because it's so messed up, sort of the director's power over the viewer. Because I think one of the reasons Marquis de Sade wrote it, he wanted to write something that was unreadable. So he wanted to get worse and worse, and he sort of made it a challenge to get so sick and so depraved that people would not be able to finish it. And I think that sort of translated in a way, I think he tried to translate that into the film and get that spirit in there of, how far can I push it where people will actually watch this? Like, what is the breaking point, sort of? So I actually saw it as sort of a power play of the director over the audience in a way that the Marquis de Sade wanted a power play of himself as a writer over his audience.
Might I kind of ask a question to Celeste to jump off of that? Well, both the Marquis de Sade and Pierre Paolo Pasolini in their own time periods were provocateurs, shall we say, of the social norms of their day, especially when it came to their personal sense of sexuality. So for the Marquis de Sade, he was kind of whatever he wanted, essentially. And then I think Pasolini was gay, but at a time when such a thing was shocking and coming into, well, it was taboo, coming into the public consciousness in some form, but definitely not what it is today, of course. But bottom line is that both of these artists, philosophers, thinkers of their time are taboo artists. They provoke the public consciousness. So the question I would pose for you is, because as I was reading up on this, as I recall, the original book is partially a political work, partially an erotic work. I'm just wondering, like, to what degree do you think is it for shock value? For what degree is it as a kind of self-confession of the Marquis de Sade's own sexual fantasies? Is there a hint of what Pasolini might have found erotic in his film translation? How does that play into things?
Well, I actually think it's a kind of a combination, because I think he wrote it for himself, but I think he was pushing his own boundaries and sort of saying, how far can I take it for myself? sort of testing out his personal philosophies and what was acceptable. And I mean, he obviously like really messed up stuff that most people would not be okay with. And it's all odd to me that he was able, I mean, just in the movie context, that these four characters were able to find each other with very similar abnormal proclivities and carry this out.
Mhm.
But I think that he wrote it partly to sort of push everybody else's buttons and partly for his own amusement because he was in jail at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you got nothing better to do, right?
I think his amusement was to shock, and he wanted to be blasphemous. He wanted to shock people, and so I think that was a big part of what aroused him, was the ability to shock and sort of traumatize other people.
One and doesn't being a provocateur in some fashion go hand in hand with art? Maybe not. Provocateur, of course, being somebody who doesn't have to necessarily make something shocking in terms of content, but maybe just takes a lot of risks and does something that provokes people into thinking a certain way.
That's one of the reasons I love him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the narratives of the madams of the film were definitely explicit in detail in some of their narratives, and I think those are my favorite pieces of the film myself. I mean, while the second madam was telling her tale, the one ended up going and masturbating while listening to the narrative, and I thought that was kind of funny myself.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that the narratives are kind of go with each section. What did you think of each of these?
Well, what's interesting about the narratives, besides obviously their graphic nature, is what's interesting is who is delivering them, because when you compare them to the libertines themselves, the libertines are the president, the magistrate, the duke.
What's interesting is that you and I were actually somewhat discussing libertines yesterday, and yet anywhere that I look up anything on this film, they consider these four libertines.
Those four definitely are libertines, but like it's interesting to contrast the four libertines to the four, madams who are delivering their tales, in the sense that they are prostitutes, but they're aging. So these are tales from their past when they were young. Sometimes when they were young as 3 or something like that, like when they were that young. And so they've had a long history. Kind of an interesting thing regarding, how women are viewed in that society, how seen as in their industry is kind of past their prime, in this philosophy, in this place that you could say is past its prime, and this is sort of its last throes. While the libertines themselves, they're the ultimate people who are pushing along this idea, but they conceivably, if they didn't get put on trial for war crimes, they would be able to re-enter society in some form. But these women, more than likely, this is kind of their last throes as well. So there's sort of an interesting dimension there. But the narratives themselves are sort of in ascending order of I guess disgustingness, and of what it prompts the libertines to do after hearing them.
Right. It sort of escalates their behavior. So they start out with just eating poop and end up with murder.
Yeah. I've always found that sort of interesting, that the libertines, they bring them in there so they can tell the tales, so that way they can have some trigger for what they were gonna do anyway. Okay. But I mean, I guess it's just adding the extra little icing on the cake, shall we say?
Yeah. Anyways, Dakota, if you could pick one scene from the film that you enjoyed most, what would you say that it was?
I enjoyed the part where the prostitutes would tell the stories of their past.
Okay.
But I thought the story was odd though about where the minister burned the prostitutes' clothing.
Yes, there were definitely some odd pieces to some of the stories, but I think that kind of adds to the somewhat openly lewd commentary that these ladies or madams, as I seem to want to call them, as they wanted to portray themselves.
I don't think the stories were actually true. Maybe some of them, but I don't think the majority of them were.
Okay.
Well, I don't even know if they were necessarily meant to be true. I think they were just meant to be erotic for what.
Just based on the book, there was some stuff that they talked about that was like actually impossible. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that they were sort of just storytellers.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite matter. It's just more what excites these people's crazed imaginations.
Right.
So, was this an entirely enjoyable film for either one, any of you?
Yes.
And do you think Dane?
Well, I wouldn't. Well, let me clarify. I wouldn't say enjoy in the entertaining sense, but it's one of those things that you kind of just have to see at some point in your film. If you're serious about watching film, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to do at some point in your life just to check it off the list. And one of the great things about a film like this is I should point out, this is not a film that's made by some amateur. I mean, this is Pasolini's last film, and it's extremely well shot, extremely well acted. You know, it's everything you'd want a great film to be, and it just happens to be about that which is very unpalatable, but nevertheless true about the world that we live in. We live in a very, depraved world, a very corrupt world, a world in which humans of great power control and abuse those who are not in great positions of power, and this film does that. It's very powerful, certainly. Pleasant, not really, but powerful. And does it accomplish what it sets out to do? Yes. So, well, in that sense, sure, but actually, it's not a pleasant walk down the park, shall we say.
And Dakota, do you still enjoy the film?
Yeah, I do. I agree with Dane, but yeah, I think it's enjoyable in all the senses that Dane mentioned.
Okay. So now that we've gone down this pleasant journey of Salo, I'm going to use this part to let everyone say exactly what once again to clarify where what they do, where you can find your stuff, and we'll wrap this up here. So why don't you tell us what you do, where you're from, maybe go into a little bit more like some of the places that you can be, places that Dedgar's show can be somewhat found,
All right, I guess I'll start. Again, I'm Celeste. I'm a co-host on the horror host show Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics with host Dedgar Winter and the other co-host Maliva Ravik. And we're a weekly television show. We show mostly old movies or independent movies. We love showing those. So it's a 2-hour show, and we're on local TV here in Wisconsin. So in Kenosha, Racine, Madison, Jefferson County. We're on Channel 14 in Milwaukee and Kenosha, and Car 25 in Racine. I'd have to look up the times we're on, but you can find it. If you Google Dedger's Dark Coffin Classics, you'll find us. You can also find us that way through YouTube, or if you want our newer stuff, we're on Vimeo at vimeo.com/ddcc. And my other project is the host for the Glamour Junkie Burlesque Troupe. If you're in the area, try to find one of our shows. We put them on fairly often. Otherwise, look up Glamour Junkies and give our page a like on Facebook. That would be great.
Awesome. Dane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where we can find some of your stuff or what you do?
All right. As I said, I'm Dane Kyle. I am a writer, independent writer, director, up and comer out of Charlotte, North Carolina. You can find me on YouTube at the channel called The Dane Kyle, Keil. And you can watch my short films there, including my film Eternus, which is a black and white, silent German expressionist film. Which got a lot of praise from Peyton Reed, who directed Ant-Man, Lloyd Kaufman of Troma Entertainment, and Charles Chiodo of the Chiodo Brothers. And you can also stay tuned for my upcoming black and white film noir tribute called The Big Blind, which will be coming out later this year. Connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe to me on YouTube for all the latest updates, and watch as I transform from short filmmaker to feature filmmaker next year. And I'm also a director on a upcoming web series called The Joker Chronicles about the Clown Prince of Crime himself. So stay tuned for that as well, which will most likely be onto streaming platforms next year.
And Dakota, why don't you once again explain your film, the names of your films, maybe you kind of what you do in your company.
Yeah, I'm Dakota Bailey. I'm a independent Denver filmmaker. Me and my production company, RA Productions, have 3 feature-length films out right now. It's My Master Satan, 3 Tales of Drug-Fueled Violence, American Scumbags, and now our new film, The Acid Sorcerer.
Okay.
And for more info about me, just Google Dakota Bailey filmmaker.
Awesome. Well, I thank you once again, Dakota, for being on the show with us. It was a pleasure. I'm sure that it was a unique experience for Celeste and Dane as well to hear you too. It's kind of exciting for some of us. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in a truck driving actually right now.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay.
We'll wrap that up, and now we definitely had a great show. So stay tuned. I'll probably change this the name of this episode on YouTube, and then I'll share it with you, Dakota, and it'll be on YouTube momentarily. So,
all right. Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. All right. Let's see.